Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazzo.
Hello, friends. God bless you. Welcome. Thank you for watching and sharing the podcast. We're talking with Sam Sorbo today, and we spoke a while back about her book, Words for Warriors. We'll talk a little bit about that, plus recent projects she's got going on. But of course, we like to talk about education or lack thereof in the government schools. She is an education freedom advocate. Also, if you are familiar with her work and her husband, Kevin, very successful Hollywood film actress, writer, producer. She is also a best-selling author, national syndicated radio host, public speaker, and very important, home education mentor. So we want to bring in Sam Sorbo. Welcome to Worldview Matters. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks for your time. Let's start with a photo I saw on your Facebook page. I love it. You're going to have to explain this. Kevin's wearing a jacket. He opened it up, and there's, first of all, your experience at Mar-a-Lago, and then all the movies. He's got pictures of you, and what's inside his jacket? Is there any secrets?
Well, the lining of his jacket is actually material that has most of his faith-based movie posters printed on the material. So it's a very special jacket. Also, the back of the vest, it's a three-piece tuxedo, and it has all his faith-based movies on it. So he's kind of a walking billboard. Although, I mean, frankly, he's a walking billboard anyway. He's Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. I love that picture. Anyway, what was your experience like there? What was the event?
Oh, that event was it was a golden evening for President Trump, and they based it on sort of 007. So now they're calling him 0047. And Trump came and spoke, and we honored Mike Lindell. And there was just a ton of people there. So General Michael Flynn and Tom Homan and Carrie Lake and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and wow. just a plethora of names in the crowd. It was a lot of fun. It was very patriotic. The crowd really got into it, and we had a blast.
You travel a lot, and you guys do live in Florida now, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. How long have you lived there?
Almost 4 years.
4 years. I thought it was longer than that. But anyway, you've done a lot of work from Hollywood, both coasts, and also you guys have both filmed up in Canada too, right?
That's correct, yeah.
All right. A lot of projects. Any new projects coming out? Because we are going to talk about Miracle in East Texas in just a few minutes, but anything new coming up?
Yeah, there are a couple of movies. You know, my husband stays very busy, so and I don't keep his schedule, so I don't actually know everything that he has going on. It's pretty funny. We sometimes talk, but we do have a project that we're about to start that's coming up. And also my son is going to be in it. So that's kind of exciting for him. And then Kevin's got some films that are coming out this year, but I'll be honest, I don't know.
Hard to keep up with, I would imagine. He's busy. I mean, it's interesting since he was to some degree canceled, in a way by Hollywood, and his agent dropped him because of his Christian conservative values. It seems like he's busier. He's done, I think he said more than 40 films. Is that true? Is it something like that?
Well, it's more than 50 films, and he wasn't sort of canceled. He's probably the poster child for the cancel culture. He was one of the first that was just basically persona non grata when they found out where he stood politically. And from a faith perspective as well, which is basically one and the same. I don't think that Christians today can actually be Democrats. The Democrat Party has tripled down on their right to kill babies in the womb. And so that, to me, that's the issue, right? Either you believe in life and freedom, or you believe in slavery and death. And so there's a very strong dividing line. And Kevin, of course, it comes out on the side of life, and the people who are pro-death hate that because the devil hates the light.
Amen. And they justify things such as removing preborn human babies from mothers' wombs by calling it reproductive freedom, choice. My body,
And
my
nobody
choice.
buys that. Everybody knows that it's a baby. The only reason you want to remove it is because it's a baby, because it's a human being. If it were a kitten, there would be an uproar. If it were a toaster, you wouldn't have to do it. But because it is a human being, that is why they need to remove it. Very clear.
And it is a demonic agenda. So
Well,
you
it's child
said,
sacrifice.
yes, it is. And that's a plank of the Democrat Party. And it's nothing new under the sun. It's putting your kids on the altar of Molech.
Yes.
You said something, I think you said nobody believes that. If they don't believe it, there are a lot of social justice activists and minions that are really dedicated to the cause. So do you think it's just indoctrination? Do you think it's just they're buying the talking points? They don't really understand spiritually, scientifically, biologically what's happening in a mother's womb?
So this is such a clever conversation because this all goes back to education, which is my topic of interest. And the fact is that people can lie to themselves because they haven't been taught discernment because they went to government schools. People can believe lies because they haven't been taught discernment because they went to government schools. And so you can have people trapped in a lie, not realizing that they've been trapped in a lie. They can adhere to the lie because they bought the lie. They did a horrible, horrible thing, and they don't know how to walk themselves back from that. I pity those people. I do. But I can't mince words about what we know is the truth. Mm-hmm. And there's a big part of the pro-choice or pro-death movement that has now come out and said, hey, let's not mince words. We know that we're killing a baby. We just value the mother more. Well, I put it to you, it's not an either or situation. So there's no reason to disdain the life of the baby. And the people who say, well, we love children, we're pro-choice, but we love children. No, if you care for the life of the child after the child's born, then you must care for the life of the child before the child's born. It's not fair giving the child like some hurdle that the child has to overcome in order for you to care for it. You either care for it or you don't care for it.
Well, biblically, the Bible sees life inside a mother's womb just the same as an infant
Yes.
or a toddler.
Yes.
For example, they call a pregnant woman with child. They don't say with tissue, with fetus, with potential. No, with child, right? And so they use these clever words to try to, push their agenda. And it's amazing, Sam, that we are a very divided country and in some cases a very divided church because even well-meaning or professing Christians have fallen for some of the rhetoric, right?
Well, unfortunately, the church bought into the government school system. And even church schools are using government supplied resources, government educational, materials, government schooling to train up children in the way that they should go. The Bible's very clear on this. The Bible never says send your child to a good school. The Bible never mentions that the child should attend school. In fact, the Bible admonishes the parents to educate their children, to raise them up. And by the way, when we talk about the education of the child, we're talking about the whole child. We're not talking simply academics. That's the lie that we've been sold by the government schools, is that education is simply academics, but it is much, much more than that. And so now what we're seeing today is sort of the culmination of decades of this misapprehension that education is purely academics. We are seeing play out in our culture a lack of morality because we haven't taught morality in our schools or in our families for decades. Because once you tell the family, the parents, don't worry about it, we've got the education of the child covered, you give the child to us to be educated, then the parents quite understandably say, oh, okay, so I really don't have to do anything more for the education of my child. Now, some parents, they figure that out and they go, wait a minute, I got to teach my child to behave. I have to teach my child to go to church, what it's like to go to church. Like I have to teach my child the teachings of my faith. But a lot of parents don't. And those parents even go to church, but they drop their kids off at Sunday school because the churches have been sort of lured into this idea that Sunday school is a good place for children to grow up. It's not. Children should be in church with their parents and listening to the pastor with their parents, watching their parents, observing their parents, take in the teaching. So we've been drawn so far off course by, I think, the church's desire maybe to fit in with the culture, or the church's subjection to the culture and their willingness to conform to the culture. And this is a dangerous thing. And right now, more than ever before, we need churches to stand up. We need pastors to stand up and say, no, not on my watch. We're going to do it differently over here. Come and join us. Because when you turn your family towards home education, and with the support of the church even, which is a beautiful thing, then what you find is children that are growing up in freedom, with a love of freedom, with an understanding of the drastic nature of this particular union of states, of this country, and the freedom that we embrace, that freedom having been authored by Jesus Christ alone, right? And our founders, 56 of them, all Christian men who embrace the freedom as authored by Christ. And then you have freedom fighters. You have people who understand what's at stake. You have people who won't compromise their morals. You have men of integrity, women of integrity who understand what honor is and who understand truth, right? And this is what is not being taught in the schools. Schools today are by and large a complete distraction from education. They are not education.
Well, absolutely. It's indoctrination. We know that by now. What we're seeing with the young generation, once they get out of high school, they are really social justice disciples. They're disciples of the left. That's what the system seems to be built to do, make Marxist disciples or disciples of the left. Sam Sorbo, before we take a very quick break, you've got a great story. You went to Duke University, and when you had young children, you didn't think you were capable of homeschooling your kids. Tell us that story.
Yeah, I mean, I went to Duke University. I was an engineering student. I studied biomedical engineering. In essence, not to brag, but I'm pretty clever. I speak 5 languages. And I still didn't think that I was capable of educating my children, which told me, I figured this out. I'm like, wait, but if I got through school and I'm like adept, like I'm accomplished, and I still feel incompetent, what good was my schooling? Right? So why would I then put my children in that environment so that they can learn how incompetent they are? Because that is really the core competency of our schools. Is our schools teach us to understand just how incompetent we really are. It's the opposite of education.
Yep, absolutely. We've got to take a very brief break. We're with Sam Sorbo. By the way, the website, samsorbo.com. When we come back, we're going to talk about Sorbo Studios, her book, Words for Warriors, and we'll squeeze in information on Miracle in East Texas. That's coming up.
Today's show is brought to you by Harbingers Daily. World news biblically understood. Stay informed at harbingersdaily.com.
If you're listening to our show via audio podcast, please help us out by leaving a 5-star review. Apparently, that helps the show rise in the rankings. That's how things work. Also, we are open to new sponsors. So email us, worldviewmatters.tv. Email us and we'll get you to our producer and you can talk about that. So Sam, you've got a book out. A couple years ago, we talked about it, but an important book because as you say, the left has redefined language and they're using words as weapons. It's called Words for Warriors. I love the subtitle almost as much as I do the title. Fight back against crazy socialists and the toxic liberal left. Why did you decide to write that? I know you were fed up at some point, but tell us about it.
Well, have you noticed that we are afraid to say certain things?
Yeah.
I mean, and they're fairly innocuous things. I'm not talking about we're afraid to insult people because it's rude to insult people, but we're afraid to speak truth. We are afraid to speak truth. Words have power. And the lack of words also has its own power. And so what happened for me was I understood that they were abusing the word fascist. Fascism is a left-wing ideology. There's no mincing around this word. I know that they've convinced a lot of people that fascism is right-wing, and they did that so that they could then denigrate the right. But if you really examine it, there's no violence on the right, by and large. Very, very little violence on the right. They will, because they hate the right so much, they will try to aggrandize the little tiny bit of violence that there might be on the right-hand side of the political spectrum. Fascism, however, is left-wing. And they try to brand it as right-wing so that they can then claim that the right is very violent, but it's not. And fascism is left-wing if you look at what it actually means. So you have communism, socialism, and fascism. And communism is the state owns and controls everything. Socialism is simply the path, the kinder, gentler pathway towards communism without the bloody revolution. So it's the government getting control of everything in the process of controlling everything. We have much of that here in the United States. Fascism is, no, you still get to own it. The government gets to tell you exactly what you may and may not do with it. And by and large, we're talking about the means of production, because that's the Communist Manifesto. They're talking about the means of production. So fascism is the same as communism. It just is a change of ownership, but not in practical application. It changes nothing. So I wrote a book based on this idea that we've lost the meaning of the word fascism, because I started realizing there are a lot of words that we don't really understand the meaning of. Abortion, we talked about earlier. It is the killing of an innocent young baby. That's what it is. Let's not try to make it seem like it's something else. And there's a ton more words. And so I will say that I had a lot of fun writing the book. I got pretty sarcastic. I think even in one of the definitions at the end, I wrote, duh, because I just get fed up with the ignorance. And I wanted to codify in writing, this is what these words mean so that you can go look them up. The next time somebody challenges you, or the next time you're sitting on the toilet, you can look up words and learn what new words mean. Abrogation is an excellent word to know what that means. It's the way that the Islamists change the meaning of the Quran. They say, oh, well, this verse abrogates the last verse, meaning it nullifies the verse that came before it. So apparently the Quran has some mistakes in it. By their own admission, they use the word abrogate, but basically it means, oh, that was a mistake. Muhammad didn't mean that.
Yep. Fascinating. I encourage you guys to look it up. It's on Amazon, and great book. And we've got to understand this is part of the game of the left. It's not a game. It's an agenda of theirs. You rewrite the language. You kind of redefine things like truth, science, biology, gender,
man, woman.
Yeah, exactly. So real quick question. I wasn't planning on asking you this, but you kind of brought it up there with some of these issues, some of these words being redefined, and what we're seeing in our culture today. Sam Sorbo, what would our great-grandparents think?
They would think that we'd actually gone crazy. I mean, the most natural thing, every little boy and every little girl is like, oh, that's different from me. And there are only two. There's only two. There's an innie and an outie, basically. Like, there's only two. So for us to play any kind of game talking about this idea that you can pretend to be something that you're not, as basic as that. I mean, it's insanity. Mm-hmm. And the idea that we have now put into the seat of the Supreme Court a woman who refused to define what a woman was, her own gender. She refused to define what it was because she's not a biologist. Well, then President Biden shouldn't make any comment about the economy. He's not an economist. That's I mean, like, and by the way, this speaks also to my platform for education, which basically we've gone through a period of trust the experts in our nation, right? Mm-hmm. And so we've relied entirely on a so-called expert. Now, what were the qualifications? They had a title in front of their name or some letters behind their name, right? But we didn't actually discern what made this person expert, and we relied on their expertise. And this is a danger, because if the Supreme Court justice can say, well, I'm not qualified to discern what a woman is because I'm not an expert biologist, that's just insanity. The fact is that you, as a parent, are more capable, likely much more capable than any teacher you could hire for your student through the school system. Are you hearing me? You, as the parent, you know so much more than the 22-year-old who just graduated teacher's college, Marxist indoctrination teacher college, right?
Yes.
So give that some thought and ask yourself, why would you consign your young child to the teachings of a 22, 23, 30-year-old who's done nothing but be in classrooms her entire life or his entire life, right? Who you know nothing about except that the school said, okay, we'll hire that person because we can't find anybody else. You know, we need to step back and use some of the discernment that we've been given, right? 2 Timothy 1:7, for God has given me a spirit not of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Sound mind. We are called to use our minds to discern truth from falsehood, good from evil, and everything in between. And we have minds that can do that if we don't shut them off. But what happens is we go through K through 12, which is 13 years of government indoctrination that shuts down our ability to discern. This is very dangerous. This is why you need at all costs to keep your children out of the schools. And if you do nothing more than maybe read the Bible with them 15 minutes a day, you will be so farther along, so much further advanced. They will be so much better off than if you consign them to a room full of other children all day, every day of the week.
Hey, you brought up the indoctrination again. So I want to go back to one of the questions that we get oftentimes for a Christian family. What if both parents work? How do you homeschool?
What if they work? Why couldn't they homeschool if they work? What's preventing them from homeschooling?
Like 2 full-time jobs, mom and dad.
Oh, you mean they both work out of the home?
Yes.
At the same time?
I guess.
What if one of them switches their hours?
Ooh,
they don't have to both be out of the
though.
home at the same time.
Yeah,
it calls for sacrifice.
Yeah.
You know, you have to decide if your child is worth it or not. Maybe your child's not worth it. I don't know. I would say your child's probably worth it.
Yeah.
But look, there are lots of ways to skin the proverbial cat. This idea, you know, here's the thing. People say, well, I can't homeschool because blah, 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 whatever the excuse, right? Define homeschool for me. How do you define homeschool? And I guarantee you, most people who say they can't homeschool have no idea what homeschooling means, because it certainly doesn't mean painting a cute little blackboard up on your wall and installing some little children's desks and you standing in front of them, lecturing them for 8 hours a day. That's absolutely not what it means.
Next to a pride flag. So what does it mean?
Oh, next to a pride flag or a BLM flag.
Yeah.
What does it mean to home educate your children? I don't call it homeschooling because it's not school and it's not at home. So to home educate your children means teaching them stuff. You can't teach your child anything. Did you teach them how to tie their shoes? Did you teach them how to hold a knife and fork? I hope you did. Did you teach them how to walk? So you can't teach your child anything more? You're tapped out. You know nothing more. You're done. You're so stupid. There's nothing in the world that you can possibly teach your child that has any relevance whatsoever to their lives. And I would put to you, that's a lie from the pit of hell, of which you've been convinced by the people who have the most to gain from your incompetence, the people who want the money that your child brings to their school. Now, let me be clear. I don't go after teachers. I love teachers. I think teachers, by and large, not all of them, but most of them, have a heart for children. They want to help kids, and that's a beautiful thing. But the system does not help children. The system discourages learning, discourages individuality, encourages conforming, encourages trusting the expert, right? It breaks the child. It is not pro-child. The system. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a good teacher here or a good teacher there. You can also have a bad teacher here or there, which can do irreparable damage to your child. But we don't have to talk about that if you don't want to, right? If you want to just ignore that fact that not every child goes to school and becomes captain of the football team, right? Not every child, like, you know, the big one is socialization. What makes you think children are socialized in school? The fact that that's the only opportunity that they have to learn how to socialize? That proves nothing to me. In fact, if you talk to homeschoolers, if you go to any homeschool convention, everybody who goes to the homeschool conventions for the first time says, oh my gosh, these children are so social. They're so lovely to talk to. How does that happen? It's like if I don't dip my child in a vat full of other children, but instead expose my child to adults who actually know how to socialize, my child will learn how to socialize from other adults. It's crazy. Who thought that could possibly happen? I'm sorry, I'm being facetious.
No, there's a lot of myths about homeschooling that a lot of parents just haven't looked into, and they don't give themselves enough credit. And I think you made that point very clearly. We're running out of time. Sam Sorbo, let's talk about Sorbo Studios and Miracle in East Texas. Tell us about the movie and what was it like working with your husband? That must be great to be able to do that.
Oh my gosh, it is a dream come true. It's not what I figured I would be able to do with my life. This is God redeeming me from a different path. Really an incredible story. The movie is a comedy. It stars my husband and John Ratzenberger and Tyler Main and Lou Gossett Jr. And my son's even in it for a little bit. And it's just a comedy based on the true story of the East Texas oil strike, which is a phenomenal story that you wouldn't believe if you didn't know that it was actually true. But before we move on from the education piece, I just want to point out, I do have a resource for parents. Good. I don't just say these things and shoot blind. You are more than capable as a parent of a child of any age to take on the education of that child yourself. And I have resources for you. And they are at sorbostudios.com under my little banner. Also, Sam's, I see you're putting it up on the screen. Sam's.com is another place that you can go. It's the same place. So you can go there. You can find the resources. There is a book online called The Playbook for Home Learning. It is the training session for parents. It will train you to understand what we mean by the education of a child, what Proverbs means when it says raise up a child in the way he should go, which is actually basically work with the child to discover the child's innate giftings. And then in his old age, he will not depart from it. And that's your job. Your children are a gift for you to open and to help open, right? And that's the beauty of it. And that's God's plan for you. And that's my wish for you, that you would make that discovery and have that beautiful moment with your children. So go to sorbostudios.com. You'll find everything there.
And in Deuteronomy, of course, it talks about raising your kids, instructing them in the ways of the Lord. When you talk about the word, when you get up, when you walk around the house, when you sit, lay down. I mean, it says everything except for when you're eating food and going to the bathroom. Talk about the word of God, biblical worldview. Sam Sorbo on Twitter, Instagram, Rumble, Facebook. Go to her Facebook page and check out Kevin's jacket, the inner lining. It's great. We appreciate your time today. Thank you for your voice, both of you. You are one flesh. So what a power couple.
Follow Kevin on Twitter.
Yes.
Make sure you follow Kevin and me. Follow me on Twitter also, please.
Yes. Trigger warning if you follow Kevin. I'm kidding. But he says some great stuff. Sam, thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too.
All right. Thanks, guys. Hey, continue to share the show. That's how it's getting out there. We appreciate you. God bless you. And as always, keep speaking the truth about things that matter.